Hi, I'm John and welcome back to my Lair of Action Figures. Today is going to be a review of a new G.I. Joe Classified Figures, not really new, because this one came out in 2022. This is Sergeant Slaughter, the first version of him, because this is going to be a follow-up to the video that I did about the Man Marauder Sergeant Slaughter. So we're going to be having a closer look at this box, going to dive into the history of this figure, talk about 25th anniversary versions, original versions, my thoughts about this figure, and do I think this figure is a collectible item. So let's start by, of course, the packaging. You know that I hate this packaging because there's no blister, so you cannot see what's in it. So this is number 53. So this figure came out in 2022. The suggested retail price for this figure is $34.99 and €42.99 in Europe. Of course, like I said, not going to waste my time on the box, but I really do not like this box. So of course we have, this is the best part of the box. You have the figure, you have the different accessories that come with it. So we're not going to waste much time. You already know what I think about this box. So let's move on and let's dive into the history of this figure. So, like I said, let's dive into history. Now, this figure, when it came out originally in 1986, of course, you know that it's one of my favorite lines. It didn't came as a single figure. Now, of course, you could get it through a mail order, but the original version of the figure came with the Triple T. So this is my mint in box version. This is, of course, as you can see, the European version of this release. So of course this is something that I really enjoyed to have. Of course, at the time being, he was a US Marine, even if the Sergeant Slaughter character never really went through the military, the real one. So of course he was joined with the Marines, and of course this is why for you will have also Leatherneck. So of course we can have a look at the box. Of course it might be very interesting for people who are not, of course, from Europe, the collectors who want to see the different versions. So, of course, this is a French version. So, of course, you will have his file card who is in French. So, yes, not much here to see, but we'll let you do a pause if you want to have a closer look. Now, of course, what I was more thinking and more interested about was to present the versions that we got for the 25th anniversary line of the G.I. Joe figures. So, of course, these are some interesting characters that were done for San Diego Comic-Con. Now, you have to understand, like before, the figures over here were, of course, have some issues with the licensing due to the fact that Sergeant Slaughter is in fact a WWE wrestler. So this puts it as a bit of a problem, because if you watch Netflix documentary and if you know a bit the history about it, and I also did talk about it in my last video, he is obliged to stay with the WWE. So from what I understood and I read, he quit the WWE. So he is now in the G.I. Joe line. I think it might be more interesting, and I guess he gets a bit more gigs on that behalf. So, like we didn't know about the licensing, this came as a bit of a surprise that we got both versions. So, of course, the one that is in the Triple T, who is the regular version that you would get, is, of course, the Sergeant over here. Now, of course, we'll be doing some more reviews when I'll be going into the details, but the figure does have a lot of more interesting features than the one that came out in course in 1986 due to the articulation, and also the fact that you had the possibility to have remove his whistle. As you can see, there's some extra accessories because he only comes with his baton. So this is, like I said, the 25th anniversary, and this was the mail order version. So I'm kind of surprised that Hasbro didn't go on to the mail order version of the figure yet, because he had the little Sergeant emblems, he had the G.I. Joe logo on the side, you can see over there. I did not open this one, I only wanted to have this Sergeant. This one was not available in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. He was only available in the US or in North America. as a mail order. Sadly, we were not able to get it. So that's going to be all about the history about this figure. Let's dive into what do we get in the box. So, of course, we are going to get Sergeant Slaughter. We're going to get his mini-me version figure wrapped up. We're going to get his hat. We get, of course, his glasses. We also do get an AK-47 with the little light on the side. This is, of course, the same version as the one you get with the Cobra officer. We get his baton, we get his whistle, and then we get a whole bunch of hands. This is something that Hasbro really definitely needs to be putting in a lot more on their figures. I will be having a closer look at that. So, if we take a closer look at Sergeant Slaughter, he does have a pretty mean face. He is also whipped a lot more than the real version of it. But as you can see, there's a lot of details on the figure itself. The fact that the buckle doesn't have the Marine logo, that is a question of trademark. But as you can see, the figure is pretty bulky. When I'm looking at the head sculpt that they did for him, it does look pretty neat and comes out nice. And he reminds me of a game back in the days. I think it was Konami who did it, where the guy was called Cody and was a huge guy who had a bit the same look as this. So anybody who was putting 25 cents or 10 cents into those machines will remember all of this. But the figure is pretty basic, and this is what you expect with this Sergeant Slaughter. So of course, like the fact that you cannot get the Marine logo, so you will go on to, sorry about it, you will have to go on to just the Sergeant, so it looks like he is just a regular drill instructor, but for the US Army. So afterwards we'll be gearing him up. Of course, we do have the glasses over here with silver painting on it, so you get a pretty good bounce back from the light, as you can see over here. So this is a nice detail, the fact of being able to remove the glasses. Of course, you will expect this for 6-inch scale figures, that you can get into more details. Of course, the AK-47, it has some nice paint features, just a bit of brown over there. So, of course, this is something that would end up with my Cobra guys. Of course, you can remove the mag over here. The light comes up over here. So, like I said, this is a bit of a surprise that you will be getting this. I would have preferred to maybe get the laser rifle that you should be getting. And of course, we're going to jump into one of the cool little accessories. Because if you remember the commercial, he is the first character who was introduced as a real character to the G.I. Joe line. Of course, we should have got Sylvester Stallone that for Rocky, but there was some licensing problems, and that's why I think it didn't go through. You will have to watch the documentary on Netflix, The Toys Who Made Us. I think there's a pretty well explanation about it. So here we're going to be looking at the baton itself. Details are pretty neat. Paint job is pretty good on it, so really cannot complain about it. Really did a great job. Then, of course, we have the multitude of hands over here, and this is something that I really like. So, of course, we will have the fists over here. We have the pointy finger over here, both left and right. And then we have this kind of grabbing hand over here, who can permit you to maybe put this over here into, oops, to give it the impression that he is holding the figure to do the commercial if you want to do it like that. So, pretty neat figure. So, let's dive into my final thoughts. Do I think this figure has a collectible value, and should you purchase it if you haven't yet? So, what are my final thoughts about this figure, and do I believe that this figure is a collectible item? So, let's start by the collectible value of this figure. Yes, I do believe that this figure has a certain collectible value due to the fact that it's based on the original Sergeant Slaughter and not the repaint of the Mad Marauders. The colors are a bit funky. does not really feel military. Over here we have some figure that has a more resemblance to a real military figure. So this one has definitely some potential, due to the fact that it's also sold out on Hasbro Pulse and on Hasbro Pulse Europe, and not many people still have it. This figure might be going up in price. So if you haven't scored him yet, you may want to really pick him up, because it's a pretty neat figure. Now, of course, you're going to be talking about the fact that this figure came out in 2022, and this makes it an older figure. So the advantage of sometimes not doing the review when the figure came out, it gives you a perspective of looking at what came out, and then you'll be able to do some comparisons. So of course, if we would be talking about this figure back in the time when I had it, I would have given this figure maybe a 9 out of 10, due to the fact that I really think he looks pretty good. And there's a lot of cool features, the fact of removing the hat, the glasses, and also having the whistle being able to be removed. All these things make this figure really highly appreciated. But now when I'm looking with the fact that we already have done the review of the Mad Marauder, and I'm seeing that for the same price I'm getting a lot more equipment, this figure is going to go down in my note out of 10, because it's not logic that we're going to be getting certain more items for the same price. And if you want this Mad Marauder, currently he's on sale on Amazon for $22. So I mean, that's a pretty good deal. It's nearly $12 off. So on top of it, you get free shipping. So this really puts it as a very interesting bargain. But coming back to this figure now, when I'm looking at it, I do reproach the fact that we're getting the AK-47. I can understand back in 2022 we didn't have so many weapons that we have today. So of course this makes it a little bit more complicated. Let's try to get a good picture of him. I have to go back that far to be able to put him with the card. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing. The fact that he doesn't have his duffel bag also is something that is mind-blowing for me, that Hasbro didn't include it. I mean, this was not very hard to do. It's a unique accessory that is only for now being given with the Mad Marauder Sergeant Slaughter, and it would have made really sense that we would have got it with this figure, because when you see him introduced in the comic book, he does come with a duffel bag, and there's a bunch of Joes who are going through it to see if he is not Zartan, because Zartan infiltrated the G.I. Joe headquarters. Anyway, going back to the figure itself, I think that there's a lot more stuff that could have been given with this figure, and this is why instead of giving it a 9 out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Because of the fact that there's a figure who came out a bit later who has more equipment. So that's going to be it for the review of my Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe Classified number 53 in the line. If you like this kind of reviews, please leave a like, share, comment. Also subscribe to the channel, it does help out a lot. Also, if you want to go and see some pictures, I have some cool pictures of this guy outside, so you can check it out on Instagram or on my Facebook page. The links are in the description. So until then, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!